Hi guys, if you enjoy the video, make sure to subscribe, like the video and leave a comment in the comment section. Let's talk about T cells. So T cells are part of what we call white blood cells, and specifically they belong to a group of white blood cells known as lymphocytes. That's lymphocytes. So as well as T cells being part of this group, you've also got your B cells, and you've got what we call our NK cells, or our natural killer cells, which are part of the innate immune response, the first immune response which occurs after exposure to the antigen. That's different to the T cells and B cells. The T cells are part of what we call the adaptive immune response, which is the second part of the immune response and can occur from, say, about 10 hours after initial exposure to the antigen to a few days after. So it takes a longer time for the T cells to become activated. The T cells are produced in what we call the bone marrow, so that's the spongy bit of bone. However, they don't stay there for long. They actually migrate to another organ, which is part of the immune system, known as the thymus. This organ sits the level at the top of the lungs and sits behind the sternum or the breastbone. And this is where the T cells actually mature and become functioning T cells. When we talk about the different types of T cells, we're normally referring to three main types, right? And the first of these is what we call our helper T cells. The second type is cytotoxic T cells, and the third type is our memory T cells. So let's take a look at each one of these in turn, starting with our helper T cells. Our helper T cells are activated by what we call MHC class II molecules. That's major histocompatibility complex class II, which are bound to a part of the antigen. So these MHC class II molecules, they're found on B cells, they're found on macrophages, and they're also found on dendritic cells. The helper T cells also have an important glycoprotein, which is called CD4 glycoprotein, and we'll come on to what that does shortly. And the main function of a helper T cell is to activate other immune cells and to activate other parts of the immune response, and it does that mainly through secreting cytokines. Cytotoxic T cells, on the other hand, they're activated by MHC class I molecules, which are present on pretty much all cells within the human body. And these MHC class I molecules are bound to a part of the antigen again, which then binds on to the T cell receptor of cytotoxic T cells. They also have glycoprotein, that's also very important, which is CD8 glycoprotein. And their main function is to directly kill the cells, usually the target cells which are presented to them. The last type of T cell, memory T cells, they're actually responsible for storing information about the first time a specific antigen has presented to the immune system. So these cells are usually found in the thymus and become activated when the same antigen presents a second time, and therefore the immune system can elicit a faster response the second time. Alright, so just a bit about T cell receptors, because this is very important to understand how T cells work. So we talked about some main types of T cells, right? We talked about three main types, but here we're going to concentrate on our helper T cells and our cytotoxic T cells. So on the bottom left, we've got a diagram of a CD4 glycoprotein molecule, which is mostly found in helper T cells. And on the bottom right, we've got a diagram of a CD8 glycoprotein molecule beside a T cell receptor, and they're mainly found in cytotoxic T cells. So let's talk about the helper T cells first. So the helper T cell is activated, or the T cell receptor of a helper T cell is activated by an MHC class II molecule, which is bound to a part of the antigen. So to recap, these MHC class II molecules are found in what we call antigen presenting cells. So that's things like B cells, macrophages, and dendritic cells. So this binds onto the T cell receptor. But we've got this CD4 glycoprotein molecule, and that's required in order to help transduce the signal into the cell. So it helps produce the signal within the helper T cell, and that activates the helper T cell and elicits the response, which is to normally secrete cytokines and activate other parts of the immune system. When we talk about our cytotoxic T cells, on the other hand, so our diagram on the bottom right, we're talking about MHC class I molecules, which are present in pretty much all cells within the human body. So these molecules, which are bound to a part of the antigen, present to the T cell receptor on a cytotoxic T cell. And we've got our CD8 glycoprotein, which we can see has a different structure. So CD4 glycoprotein, it's actually a heterodimer. It has two different parts or two different strands. And again, the CD8 glycoprotein in a cytotoxic T cell is required to help transduce the signal within the cell. So it helps activate the cytotoxic T cell, which produces a response, which is normally to kill the target cell which has presented to it, or infected or damaged cell. So that's a quick overview of T cells.